Hi, this is Mark, and welcome. I've gotten quite a few emails through the months, actually, probably over the last 3 months, asking if in the new year, because so many people are transitioning with diet, if we might do something about transitioning to a plant-based diet, avoiding animal products. I'm not going to do a how-to, but there is an important person joining us in this episode who you should hear from, and she addresses everything, not just transitioning to a plant-based diet, although her new book is a great reference guide. It's called Plant-Based Nutrition. But she talks about everything from buying organic and how important that is, and buying stuff that's frozen, supplements, and all the rest, and all of it is against the backdrop of plant-based nutrition. Julieanna Hever is her name. And J. Elvis Weinstein, the comic and filmmaker, will join us as well. And he is not a plant-based eater, so he asks a bunch of questions from that perspective. And as you know, I am plant-based. But I find out I'm not a healthy plant-based eater, as it turns out. So I may only have months to live, so that brings me to my next point. Please support our podcast. You can do it by subscribing on iTunes, on Stitcher, on the iHeartRadio app, and on YouTube. You can subscribe to this show on YouTube. I've only mentioned it once before because it's sort of a new thing. We've only done it in the last 6 months or something. It's a great way to listen to the show and enjoy the show. And YouTube, by subscribing, will send you a reminder, of course, that a new episode is up. Please do all your Amazon shopping through the Amazon click-through on our website at edge-show.com. Click on an episode and you'll see an Amazon banner. Anywhere you see Amazon, click on that, and that takes you to the same Amazon you'd be on anyway. But whatever you spend, we get a small percentage. I think it's like 2% or 3%. And as a result, it helps keep the lights on here. There's also a virtual tip jar. You can just PayPal us, and a few of you have done that, and thank you. Every dime stays with this podcast to pay the producer, to pay the webmaster, to pay our costs associated with this show. No one gets paid on this show. That's why you end up with me and J. Elvis, because we're the only ones who would work for free. The show starts with the Fast 15, Michael Shure. We get into the Sundance Film Festival, because I've just returned from the Sundance Film Festival, where I had a movie, and we'll talk a bit about that. We get into Mormons and Utah and politics, and that segues into Democrats and Republicans and closing down the government, and was it a good deal and wasn't it a good deal? Michael will put it into some perspective. Then Julieanna Hever, a brilliant dietitian and researcher, and her book is a great reference guide. Thanks for being here. Thanks for the support of the show, and let's get going.
This is The Edge.
The advantage, it means.
They let guy just spit on me for no reason.
That's horrible.
Is there some comfort in uncertainty, do you think?
You're a degenerate.
Because Australian Shepherds need action.
Wow. Yeah.
This is The Edge.
That's a self-loathing term that I use for it.
Oh, got it.
You're listening to The Edge with Mark Thompson.
Well, it's nice to have someone on board who can help us make sense of what's going on. That person is seated across from me. This is the Fast 15, politics and more. He is Michael Shure.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. No, it's great to be seated across from you. And Mark, I can talk about anything with you. But, you're the host of this show. And before we get to the mundane of politics that I bring to these great people, I'm going to be a little inquisitive myself this time. You were at Sundance.
I was at Sundance Film Festival. Yeah, thank you for asking about it.
Were you a fancy person there? Or, how did you...
Here's the brag. I'll give you the brag part.
By the way, you're allowed to brag once in a while. Everybody should. I think it's important once in a while to brag. It's the people that brag all the time about every single thing they do and name drop constantly that are the most annoying. When something cool like Sundance happens, talk about it. People want to know about it.
Well, thank you. I met these guys, and I invested in this movie because I like these guys. It's a documentary. I like the purity of their spirit. I like the purity of their message.
Right.
And so anyway, I got involved. It was very early. Okay, there's nobody. It was like a nothing movie, and my friends made fun of me for it. I didn't tell many. A year later, James Cameron comes on. He comes on as executive producer of the film. And by then, we had an Oscar-winning director. He did The Cove, which is a movie about the horrible annual tradition, I'll put it in quotes, of slaughtering those dolphins. Dolphins in that cove. They herd them all in. They slaughter them in cold blood. It's absolutely awful. But it's not a slaughterhouse movie because it was changed, and the direction of it was guided with writing by another guy. And this guy is the real reason I got into it. His name is Mark Monroe. He did the Pat Tillman story, which is a documentary that I think every American should see.
I think I've seen that. I mean, I know I've seen that.
And I've said it on this show before. All of you should watch the Pat Tillman story. It's great. It moves. It's fascinating and riveting. But it also reveals all this stuff that is really interesting.
Yeah.
It tells you about our government and our anyway.
It was fantastic. I want to just go back 1 second. Did the Cove catalyze any kind of change?
I think you could argue that it made people aware of what was going on, but I don't think yet there's any change. Now, in Japan, which is where this Taiji is, this cove in Taiji, they're more aware of it, the young generation, and I think if there's going to be change in Japan, it'll come from there. But I have to lament the fact that I don't think there's been any change. In fact, like we see in this country, there's actually a pushback. It's like, oh, you think that you can make us stop doing this? We're going to do it even more type thing. It's a horrible thought, but I do think that's happening. But anyway, this movie has none of those things. It's about elite athletes and this one MMA fighter who's on his journey. But I can talk about my movie another time. I will just tell you, kind of answering your question. So I go to Sundance, and it is cool to say, yeah, I've got a movie that's premiering here.
Right.
I mean, you don't say it to everybody, but when people say, hey, what are you doing here? And I go, oh, I got a movie that's premiering here. It is a cool kind of thing.
And there were enough, hey, what are you doing here's the other, like in Sundance, like you ran into enough people you know?
It ends up being a handful of people, but some of them are pretty important people. At least they are agents and managers, or they're other producers, or they're involved in their own projects. A lot of people are involved in their own stuff, but at least in a way, it legitimizes and this might be my own insecurity, to be honest. I mean, like you can be legit going to Sundance just because you like movies. You don't have to have a movie there.
I mean, could Jim Smith get up in the morning, buy a ticket to Sundance, and
Absolutely.
go? Oh, so you don't have to be a mover and shaker.
No, not at all. There are a lot of parties, and there are a lot of these pop-up corporate events, like YouTube has something, and Google has something. And it looks like, really, it's done so well. You go, wow, Google has a bar here? And,
These are like political conventions.
Yeah, YouTube has a restaurant. Yeah, it's exactly.
Yeah.
And so I couldn't get into any of that stuff, but I was there with my film, and I was there to support my film. So for me, going to all these parties wasn't important. I wanted to support my movie. So I went to the premiere, and then I went to the party after the premiere. We had an incredible party, and you've got all these elite athletes there, Olympians and champion weightlifters, and like these huge guys, right? And by the way, they're all vegan. They're all plant-based. I mean, these huge, when you get these guys who are going, now, where do you get your protein? It's like they're just like the Clydesdale horses that are plant-based and the silverback apes that are bad. These guys are enormous. One of them is just one of the strongest men in the world.
Yeah.
And he's plant-based. So anyway, my point is that we had a fun party, and it was a great party, and there was great music, and there was great food and all this stuff. And then there were a bunch of other events, sort of other parties and dinners, and that was enough to, make it a lot of fun.
Wow. Well done. That's cool.
So here's something, though, that where the two worlds overlap. Sundance is in Utah.
Right.
And I took a ride on Uber. There's no parking, so you're pretty much having to Uber or Lyft everywhere, or taxi, which we did as well. But I got an Uber driver who was taking me on a pretty long drive back from some guy had invited us to an AT&T party, and I didn't even want to go. It's the end of the night, but he's a guy who knows me, and so I thought, okay, I'll go. And it was cool. It was at the Montage Hotel there in Deer Valley, or near Park City, near Sundance. And first, the Montage is gorgeous. They have a bowling alley in the hotel.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what I said. I'm thinking, this is a ski resort.
Right. I'm thinking of going. Are you here to ski? No, actually, I just come out here to bowl a couple of times a year.
I'm here for the bowling tournament. Right. So it was wild. I mean, I didn't bowl, but I went down there and I couldn't believe it. I mean, you have these people in ski parkas and all that, and now they're bowling. And just as an aside, I've never seen at a luxury hotel, the Ritz, the Biltmore, the Montage, anywhere else, a bowling alley.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I guess they have to create evening activities for when it's super cold or something. But
right. It worked. Anyway, so we're coming back in this, and then the Uber driver says,
how'd you bowl, by the way?
I did not bowl.
Okay.
He says that he used to work for the NSA, and he works for intelligence in the U.S. government. He was talking about that a little bit. He said, I've run for a public office here in Utah, and he said, I ran as an independent, and I got crushed. He said, I'm not running as an independent again. I'm going to run as a Republican.
Yeah.
Because he'd worked in government for so long, or long enough, I think over a decade. He was telling me that he is not Mormon, but interacts with a lot of Mormons there in Utah. He said the government likes Mormons. because Mormons, he says, are ready to adhere to a structure more easily than a lot of people who are not in the Mormon church. Their followers is what he was suggesting.
It's interesting.
And he said if you go to the top levels of government, if you get 2 or 3 or 4 levels down, he said very common to find a Mormon person there. I mean, I haven't fact-checked that.
Why would there be a Mormon person there?
Because those people do well in the government structure because they follow orders and they don't ask questions.
Well, there's that line in the Book of Mormon in one of the songs, which is in the "I am a Mormon, and a Mormon just believes." So it's like if that they don't think about it, they don't go. I mean, that's obviously a satire, but
and by the way, I met another Uber driver who was Mormon. He's a therapist there. He was the coolest guy. Like I thought, wow, that's the therapist I want. That guy.
No, you don't want him. You want the one that's 3 rungs up. He's the therapist.
Mark, he's an Uber driver. How good a therapist could he be?
Exactly right. Yeah.
So there were kind of those moments where I was asking everybody who lived in Salt Lake about their sort of relationships to the Mormon community there, and also just their relationships generally and political bents. Park City, as you might imagine, there's this town in the mountains, is progressive. Okay, it's sort of an island of progressiveness.
A friend of mine lives there all year round. He moved from New York City to Park City.
I could see that. It's not cheap. It's probably it's not like you cash out of California, you go to Park City and get any value.
Right. But there's always a place to bowl.
In the flats in Salt Lake, I think there is value. Now that is a more conservative community.
Yeah, it is. I spent time there covering the last election. And one of my favorite stories I did when I was with Al Jazeera America was a story about Muslims and Mormons and how the Mormons didn't like Donald Trump. And it is such a conservative state, Utah, and et cetera, et cetera. They didn't like him because of his stance on Muslims, which sort of breaks a kind of lily white myth that we have in our head of what the Mormons believe. And it's because, they were a persecuted religion when they began. They were chased out of every place they went, and they wound up in Utah. So the stance on sending Muslims back or not allowing them in was, really just the antithesis of how these people believe. I spoke with an imam there outside of Salt Lake City who said when he goes to the Conference of American Imams, he's actually South African himself, but the ones that are in mosques around the country here, he said everybody wants his job. They said, when are you going to move back to South Africa? We want your posting. Because the Mormons are so good to the Muslim. Whenever there's an event that was perpetrated by a lone wolf Muslim in the name of ISIS or whatever, the community off-duty policemen come by just to volunteer their time to protect the mosque. The wives of Mormon elders go with food. They worship there together just to make them know they're part of the community. He said it's an amazing place to be.
Well, you're right. I wouldn't have thought that to be the case.
Yeah, it was very eye-opening.
I have to say, too, I mean, gorgeous people, tight on family and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But my pal was Mormon. I want to get him on the podcast. I say was because he didn't go on his mission. And he said at 17, when I didn't go on the mission, the entire town just ostracized me.
Well, I mean, these are the flaws of religion, obviously. I'm picking out one sort of very interesting
I just
thing.
meant to do one for our listeners who are all going to run down to become Mormon.
No, but it is a fascinating church that is so crazy flawed like any other one. You know, I mean, that the Amish do the same thing.
Oh,
you know, they do
the
their
Amish, and maybe even worse.
Yeah, it is.
It's a more cloistered community.
It is, and it's much more regressive, and there are values to everything in religion, but when you look very closely, too, there are so many drawbacks as well.
And by the way, my movie is called The Game Changers, and it will be out. You will get a chance to see it. There are already distributors competing to distribute it, so we're really excited about it. It's amazing, and I think it's a really great movie.
And does it say Mark Thompson on the screen?
My name, I think, is in the credits.
Don't say. See that you just here's what just happened, Mark.
Right.
You went from humble brag guy to too cool for school guy. My name, I think, is in the credits. If your name's in the credits, your name's in the credits.
Yeah, I'll tell you. Here's what happens, though. I kind of was trying to be accurate. Here's what happens. I just don't know how any of this crap goes down. And somebody said to me after the screening, but the movie I saw, somebody said to me, "Oh yeah, they're going to change that one thing."
What, your name in the credit?
And I'm thinking, well, if they can change that one thing, they can change my name in the credits. So even though I saw my name in the credits.
So it was there. Okay.
It was there. I'm just saying I don't know if it'll survive. I suspect it will.
It will survive. They're not going to go back and say, hey, listen, the movie looks great. I'm glad we cut out this 1 minute. I'm glad we added this, the part with the guy at the bar. But, what do you think about the Mark Thompson credit?
Yeah.
And then they're going to be like, well, we'll never get it on the Edge show then. All right, leave it in.
All right. This will not come out of your Fast 15 time, all of that talk about Sundance. Let me get into what's happening here. This has been an extremely eventful period. The shutdown that has been averted, government shutdown, sort of pointed up the problems in this political system. I'm less concerned with who's to blame, because that was all the mainstream media conversation. Yeah. Who's to blame? Democrats are holding it up. Republicans are saying that Democrats are holding it up. Democrats are saying you control everything. How can we be holding it up? I'm more concerned with what this says about our political system, that this happens, that we're living month to month in a highly partisan political environment.
I mean, I think it's cyclical. The partisanship and the divide are more pronounced now than they've been, in quite a while. And I think part of it has to do with the fact it predates Donald Trump, but I think this new version of it has to do with Donald Trump in that the Republicans on Capitol Hill are getting no guidance from the White House. They're not getting any kind of pronouncement of what the White House wants, which is usually how they would behave, right? And because of that, they're feeling it out as well. So a lot of the procrastination that's happening, and not that it's unprecedented, a lot of the procrastination has to do with not really knowing what their guide is, what their compass is. Now you could say, oh, but they're all human beings. They should have their own compasses, and we elected them. Well, the way our government is constructed is that the White House sends the signals, the Congress follows along unless they don't like what the White House is saying. This Congress hasn't even had a chance to say they don't really like what the White House is saying because the message is so mixed.
They don't know what the White House is saying.
They don't know what the White House is saying. Apparently, and this is not just anecdotal, whenever a member of Congress meets with the president, whether it's leadership or a group of them who are rank and file, they leave the room thinking the president is on their team until the next person gets in the president's ear, and that changes everything. I'm not saying anything new here, but it makes running Congress very, very difficult. That said, there is still this divide that exists not only, and you're seeing it within the parties, but of course between the parties here, and the agendas that they have. The Republicans are scared of losing the Congress in 2018. Part of what scares them is not just that people don't like Donald Trump, but they, because of what I just described, haven't been able to do anything because of how they feel about Donald Trump as well. It's a very messy situation, but it has rendered our government really stalled, which is what the Democrats want, because they don't want to see it's a victory for Democrats if nothing gets done when the Republicans control the White House and both houses of Congress.
Haven't the Republicans, though, through media, which I think they use better than the Democrats, and the president does use media better than the Democrats. I think Trump uses media better than the Republicans.
Unless you take Twitter away, which I'm not saying you should, and I'm not saying that that's fair to do in your argument either. But without Twitter, I don't think he uses the media very well.
Twitter's not going away, so it's sort of like a moot point.
No, I wasn't even saying the hype. You're right, and I'm not arguing that it should. I'm just saying that I think his Twitter game is really what puts him over. I don't think without it, and it doesn't matter because he's got it, and that's part of the game. So absolutely, but it's this new media thing. But your point is true that Republicans are better at it.
And so, to that point, they paint the Democrats as the problem, as the obstructionist party.
It's the right play for them to have made, right? I mean, you could paint that as it was, right?
But people don't see it that way. People don't see it as a political necessity. They see it as, oh, we've got to close the government down because of the blanks, in this case, the Democrats. It was the GOP.
Right. Well, it was the GOP.
When Ted Cruz closed it down.
Of course, right. And it's the GOP now, too. I mean, or the Democrats. You can spin it either way.
Right.
But they closed it down together, right? I mean, without the Democrats getting them over 60 votes because of a Senate rule, they couldn't keep the government running, right? So they didn't have enough Democrats. They didn't have enough Republicans either. Republicans went to the other side as well. So the Republicans, it's however you want to spin it. The government shut down and the government reopened, and the story fades as quickly. I mean, we're not talking about Michael Wolff's book anymore, right? We're not talking about Stormy Daniels, which is, to me, the most amazing thing that's happening in politics right now.
Well, the interesting thing about the Stormy Daniels story is, and we did touch on it last time you were here, is the new revelation that $130,000, which was the amount paid to Stormy Daniels, was transferred to Trump's account from coffers of his political campaign
after the election. Yeah, I don't know enough about that.
Is that not significant?
It's not significant because there's no direct correlation. Donald Trump was getting, there were fluctuating rents of Trump properties by the campaign at different times. The fact that 130,000 could have been a number that came up. It wasn't $130,412.16, which was exactly what they gave Stormy Daniels. So I don't know that it doesn't matter.
There's no memo, Stormy Daniels hush money?
No, I didn't see it there.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know that to me that's not bothersome yet unless it's proven that that's the case. And
by the way, let me just go back a step.
Yeah.
They could rush through that tax legislation, literally not even know what's in it. I mean, they really literally didn't even know what's in it. When I say they, I mean most of the legislators who were thumping it so heavily.
Right.
And yet there's no rush to get the government.
Well, it's not even no rush. They didn't want to do it. Both had what they thought were principal positions about it. The tax bill, it was almost like they were drooling to get it done because that's what they ran on. And that was finally something that they were unified with the White House about. When they unify with the White House, it's a lot easier for them. On health care, they couldn't because the White House was sending mixed messages about it. It was a repeal and replace. Well, some Republicans thought that was what was going to happen. But as the White House evolved their position, the Republicans in Congress didn't know what to do with the tax bill. It was like a dream, right? Here it is. We'll push it through. It's done, and everybody can go home and be happy. And that's what the advantages of governing with both houses of Congress and the White House is. You can do that if you're united. They just haven't been.
The DACA kids, that likely will be something that doesn't get addressed, you think, in this 3-week period?
They're saying that it's going to, and they say that there's going to be... Listen, Democrats, there are a lot of progressives who are really pissed off and saying, the Democrats caved again and they gave in. I say there's absolutely no way anybody can know who, quote-unquote, won this thing, right? The Democrats, because of and on behalf of the Dreamers and the DACA participants in that program, and they're two different things, they together decided that we were going to stand up for these people and we're not going to open the government because this majority leader is not telling us that he's going to hold a vote. Lo and behold, a deal is struck. McConnell assures them that they're going to hold a vote. If he doesn't, it's a public assurance. If he doesn't hold this vote, he and the Republicans stand to lose a lot. This is a big constituency. If he holds the vote, then it's a win for the Democrats and Chuck Schumer and the most progressive among them. It's a question of whether you trust Mitch McConnell. In 2.5 weeks, you'll know whether he was trustworthy on this.
There's a new tax, and it's a substantial one.
Drill, baby, drill tax.
Yeah, it's a tariff. Any solar panels that are coming in from overseas will be the targets of this tariff. The tariff starts at 30%. And it gradually declines each year. But the idea, ostensibly, was to help those who are involved in conventional energy, coal jobs, and
right,
that kind
of course.
Thing.
That's the drill, baby, drill contingent.
But the truth is that there are more jobs, many, many more jobs, associated with this solar energy industry than are associated with the traditional old school.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, there's a potential for more jobs, but right now there are more existing jobs in the other sector. Is that right, or am I wrong?
Well, there are going to be layoffs in the solar energy world, and that is to say those that are involved in installation, sales, and all the rest. And you're going to get tariffs going the other way, too.
That's what's going to happen. And
so American exports are going to be affected.
Are going to be hurt by this as well. And I don't know if this is to prove a point. I don't know if this is grandstanding to say, hey, Trump base, we're doing what we said we'd do, protecting these coal jobs. We're friends with petroleum. But if it's just to make a point, this is the kind of thing that, that can be used so easily against them as well.
Well, and of course the offshore drilling bans that have been lifted on the coastal portions of the U.S.
And then reinstated in Florida because of political influence there.
Yeah, exactly. So they won't be drilling in Florida, but they will be drilling in California if this all stands.
And it does seem punitive. And this is a president and an administration and a brand of politics that is very, very punitive.
After the mudslides, which we talked about last week, I started thinking about, in view of these drilling restrictions being lifted and him being rough on California, there was just a major quake in Alaska. And it got all of us in California thinking, because we're overdue. I mean, on a geological computer projection, we're overdue.
When were we due?
There was a 50-year window, and we're past year 50.
Well, wasn't the last big one here in 93?
Yeah, but that wasn't even the big one.
I see. Great.
Well, the Alaska quake was a 7.9 this morning.
Wow.
The Northridge quake you're talking about in 94 was 6.7.
Wow.
So, and with that whole logarithmic thing where it actually is,
it's exponential. It's not just. Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm just saying, if we had a quake of that size in California, the damage would be substantial and we'd need federal assistance. And I just don't know if this president, who is clearly not president for all the people, would be there to lead any charge to help.
No, nobody has seen him show leadership in the wake of any kind of disaster. Again, we go to punitive. Look what he did and said in Puerto Rico and continues, really. I mean, through a lackadaisical approach to not even knowing that they were American citizens. He didn't go to Santa Barbara to the mudslides that killed so many. You don't see any indication. How much that matters, I don't know. It's not his brand. He's made his brand successful without it, without compassion.
Yeah, and maybe that'll carry the day.
Yeah, I mean, he loves his brand. And so, if I'm him, I'm saying, I don't need to go do that. That's not my job.
Lastly, I was really troubled by the gunman that the FBI apprehended on his way to CNN.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So he was going to go shoot up CNN, this gunman, for those who don't know. And they got him with all of these messages. He was arrested after allegedly calling CNN 22 times a week ago. And he said, "Fake news, I'm coming to gun you all down." And he said, "I'm smarter than you, more powerful than you. I have more guns than you, more manpower. Your caste is about to get gunned down in a matter of hours. I'm coming to Georgia right now," he said, "to go to the CNN headquarters to effing gun every single last one of you down." The FBI traced the call and arrested him over those threats.
Hours later, Mr. Bannon was taken into custody.
Look, I think it's what happens when you put enough toxic stuff out there.
Of course.
People spark to it. Not everybody. Most people know.
Or just one person, but everybody hears about it, so it seems like it's an epidemic. And that's a problem that is unavoidable with the amount of media we have, the amount of 24-hour news coverage. It sounds like a cliche now, but it's true. It's constant, and it only lasts that long. There was a school shooting in Kentucky. It's not even a huge story now. It's incredible the way we've just become inured to this stuff, but how quickly it goes away and how we think. It's like a plane crash, Mark. When a plane crashes, and you hate to say they're pitching a no-hitter, but we are living in the safest of aviation times right now. When a plane crashes, it is devastating, and the media comes down like hordes over the families and the deaths and the rescues and the recovery and the 24 hours and boom. Everybody's afraid of flying because there was a plane crash, right? That's what happens, and it's the same thing here. It's like we think that there's this backlash against CNN. It could just be, the people are pissed and there's one crazy guy, but it makes it seem epidemic.
We have to leave you, Michael. This has been great. Michael, thank you for putting our world in some kind of perspective. Ladies and gentlemen, Michael Shure.
Oh, thank you all. Oh, thank you. That's so kind.
Thanks, Michael.
I want to thank you for all the ways that you support my friends on the Edge podcast. And if you haven't already, why don't you show your support and subscribe? What's the matter with you? Go to Edge Show. Oh, it's Edge dash. What's with the dash? Stupid. All right, I want to thank you for all the ways that you support my friends on the Edge podcast. Show your support and leave something on their website, edge-show.com. Stupid. Why is there a dash?
edge-show.com.
edge-show.com.
Well, I'm joined by J. Elvis Weinstein. You know J. Elvis because, Josh, you were the original voice of Servo on Mystery Science Theater.
True.
And you are the director of 2 documentaries, one of which people can see now.
They can. Just out on iTunes, Google Play, Amazon, your pay-per-view cable systems. It's called I Need You to Kill, about stand-up in Asia.
I'm always excited to be alongside you, Josh, but I'm even more excited by the other person who I'll be alongside today. You've seen her on Steve Harvey. You've seen her on all those. If it's a talk show, she's done it. She's a magical ambassador for plant-based nutrition, and her book is called Plant-Based Nutrition. A registered dietitian specializing in weight management, disease prevention management, sports nutrition. She wrote a book, which I loved, called The Vegetarian Diet, which is really a cool book, and you should go pick that up. But she has a new book which is the complete idiot's guide to
Now we're
plant-based
talking.
nutrition. Julieanna Hever.
Welcome, Magic
Yes.
Ambassador.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Mark.
Now, it says idiot's guide in the upper left, but there's a lot of information in this book.
We
Yeah.
packed it. We packed it in. We're trying to keep it simple, but there's so much, and I just wanted to be a reference. You know, we wanted people to have a resource to get all of their questions answered.
Are there any idiot endorsements on the back?
If there were, I would
good
be
book.
in the hunt. I'll tell you who wrote the foreword. The foreword is written by,
Penn Jillette.
Very nice.
Yeah.
and Penn Jillette lost how much?
Over 100 pounds and kept it off, got off most of his hypertension medications. Like the doctors were really worried about him, and they told him that he was going to need to have gastric bypass surgery or gastric sleeve, and he was desperate. And so he worked with my co-author, Ray Cronice, and he completely transformed his health. He eats mostly plants now, passionately. Yeah.
It's really wild.
And he's inspired now. He wrote a book about it called Presto. And since that book came out, there's been 30,000 pounds lost by other people inspired by them.
Oh, that's cool that they even track that.
Yeah.
I'm really glad you're here at the beginning of the year because a lot of people, and I do get emails and tweets saying, hey, I'm trying it this year. I'm trying to integrate more plant-based, or I'm trying to go completely plant-based. So I'm really glad that we're doing this at the beginning of the year. At the beginning of this book, after you get past the Penn Jillette forward, which is really compelling because of the changes he made in his own life, you make some distinctions, and I realize, wait a minute, I'm a plant-based eater, but I don't know that I'm the healthiest vegan eater because I go for like a lot of the somehow processed stuff, and some of the things that you talk about in your book kind of strip out a lot of the great things about plants. Even though you're not harming an animal, which kind of was the way I was sort of drawn to plant-based eating. This book talks about the nutritional aspects of plant-based eating and how you can transform your life and your body and get healthy, but you need to sort of stay on some healthier stuff as well.
Yeah, I mean, my biggest concern, okay, so I've been plant-based now for about 12 and a half years. And and I too started this process for the animals. But then, of course, you know, the health was so compelling, and the benefits that I saw with my clients over the last 12 years have been extraordinary. And my biggest concern is what's happened in these 12 and a half years. On the plus side, anything you could eat, I could eat vegan now. I mean, there's so many products out there. It's like a whole new world. There's vegan anything, right. Bacon ice cream, you know, I mean, anything you'd ever want, you can now have veganized. But the problem is a lot of these foods are high in the same things that you might find in the animal versions of it. And I'm seeing clients come to me with very similar health issues, as do the meat-eating clients, because they're eating a lot of these foods. So it is one of my concerns, because if we want to save the most animals, we want the most people doing well, and we want to have benefits in the research. And I'm concerned that in 10 years, when we start comparing vegans to fish eaters to vegetarians to vegans, we're not going to see any difference in their health benefits. And that'll be tragic for the whole vegan movement.
That's a meta kind of notion.
Well, and you see it. You see that the breakthroughs, I mean, and I am outside of the plant-based diet community, but you see that the innovations that are newsworthy are all these simulations of unhealthy things that are, you know, we're about to break through the cheeseburger barrier, you know. And of course, that's going to come along with all the salt and probably sugar,
saturated fat,
and sugar to make it get the mouth feel right, and you know. So I'm just getting on board with the conversation, I guess.
No,
I didn't have
great.
a point.
No, that's
but it's good.
But yeah, but I see that happening. That it's as if, you know, if the message is, hey, you're not going to miss out on the crappy diet you were eating before. You know, that's probably not the best message, you know, to say we can make the version of your crappy diet without killing an animal.
Right. I mean, the good news is, I mean, if you want a treat, you know, I still love, you know, I was in New York recently filming a show, and I ate my way through Manhattan because my favorite vegan restaurants in the world are all over Manhattan. And I was eating vegan pizzas and, you know, and really oily, salty stuff that I don't normally eat. And it's you don't feel good when you eat that stuff. And it's, you know, it's fun once in a while for a treat. It's fun that we can do that. But as long as the basis of the diet is vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes, nuts, seeds, herbs, and spices, you're going to be okay.
I will get to probably the biggest question, and the question I always get. I'll get to it in just a second, but just because you're talking about this, because so many people do transition into this plant-based eating by consuming the things you're talking about, like the veggie burger or the stuff from some veggie grill type place or Gardein type stuff, which is really just a double for everything from crab cakes to hamburger. And they go, oh my God, I think I can do it because I just had the crab cakes and they're vegan and they're great.
Absolutely. Right. And I'm glad you said that. And it's a great point. So I meant to say, I always say treat foods and transition foods because for that very reason, because we do want to get as many people eating this way as possible. the idea is to start with that stuff, but to make sure, like, really also focus on learning how to change your palate. Most people, in fact, the people that sustain a vegan diet for the longest are the ones that stepwise into it, that take their time. It took me a long time to go into it. And I work with people in both directions. Some people dive in cold tofu and some people go stepwise in. And it just, most people it's more sustainable when you do it one step at a time.
By the way, I caught the cold tofu.
Me too. I was just about to say, so that cold tofu instead of cold turkey. Very cute. But now the question that I'm asked, and you must
Let
get
me guess,
this.
Let me guess.
No, I'm sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Where do you get your protein?
Protein. Because I get it on Twitter. I get emails. You must get it all the time. Great. I'm ready to go. But where am I going to get my protein? Explain to me the protein deal and why we overvalue it. You talk about it in the book, Plant-Based Nutrition.
Everyone thinks they're an Olympic athlete, as it seems.
That's exactly right. And, we could do a whole hour on protein. But interestingly, I was at the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics Association conference. I was working at a plant-based milk booth for the first time. It was fun. And so there were hundreds of dietitians, not plant-based dietitians, all sorts of dietitians. Hundreds of them came by the booth. Not one went by without asking about protein. So it's basically, I think we are in the midst of the biggest protein obsession that the world has ever faced. Like, it's become this issue as if people are walking around with protein deficiency, or like everyone's walking around as Olympic athletes needing more and more calories.
And the truth is just the opposite, which I learned in this book that you just did, which is that we're getting too much protein, and that's putting tremendous strain on our vital organs.
Yes,
on kidneys.
And you really did your homework. Yes. So what's so interesting is that as a dietitian, I've been taught this nutritional deficiency paradigm. That was what I was taught. It's what are we going to be deficient in? How do we avoid deficiency? And that's what the whole landscape of nutrition has been about. However, we're not walking around anymore with scurvy and beriberi and pellagra, like these things that we've conquered with having adequate nutrition. We are not in times of scarcity. We are a society of overabundance, overnourishment, and most of our diseases are caused by overnourishment. But protein specifically, we need a certain amount of protein. But what we found out is that the only way we've ever extended lifespan in everything from yeasts to rodents to primates, our primate cousins, the only way we've ever extended health span and longevity is through dietary restriction without malnutrition. And specifically, it's the essential amino acids that were restricted that they believe showed all the benefit.
Take me through that again. The essential amino acids, which you also talk about, like that's the real thing that's important.
Oh, okay, so right, that's a good point. So there's
I don't quite know what that means.
Yeah, sorry.
Essential amino acid is.
I get excited about protein. Okay. Passionate about protein.
Back to for idiots mode.
Yeah, I know. Sorry.
Yeah.
So proteins are composed of amino acids. Amino acids are picture them as little beads, and they string together into different proteins. Because we have tens of thousands of proteins in our body. Every cell, every structure, every function in our body is composed of proteins. But if you break them down into their amino acid counterparts, that's what we find in the world. So there's about 20 amino acids. All plants have all of them in different amounts.
And if you just ate amino acids, they turn into proteins, is what you're saying? Or they are proteins?
So we'll eat food with, let's say we have a chickpea, okay, or a legume, whatever, a bean. And we will, or even a grain of rice has protein in it. So we will extract the proteins, break it down in our stomach and then our GI tract to the dipeptides and then to the amino. It ends up being an amino acid, and it goes into your body, and you get rid of what you don't need, and your body is so brilliant that it will string it back together into different proteins that we need. So it'll make it into a fingernail, or it'll make it into a DNA or whatever. Like it'll construct it as needed.
But let me just interrupt and say, hey, yeah, but if I just want the protein already done, don't I want to just eat the steak or whatever it is?
But you don't, because your body has to break it down. You can't absorb a protein. It doesn't go directly into your bloodstream, because then you'd be dead. But you go into toxic.
Another beef
shock.
clot.
Another beef clot. Oh, gross. Exactly. So we have to break it down anyway. So the problem is so we only need, out of the 20 amino acids, there's only 9 that are essential that we need to get from our diet. The rest we can make in our body from other amino acids. And so we only need 9. We can get them everywhere. And, but what happens is we're getting too much of all of this stuff. And what we think is that protein, all of these amino acids there's all these kind of implications with having too much of these things. And, it turns on insulin growth hormone, and it pumps, it's all about growth and stuff. And that's why cow milk and baby and human milk, and milk has a lot of protein in it because you need to grow a lot really fast. But once we've reached our full growth, we don't want to grow anymore. Growth means stuff like cancer and other chronic diseases.
But you talk about in your book the fact that milk is not good, even like if you have a kid. You talk about if you have a newborn, and as I recall, you suggest that you can overprotein that situation. There's very specific stuff that even a newborn should have. You said in your book that breast milk and formula are okay for
the first year.
For the first year.
Yeah, we did. We go through the whole life cycle in the book. So we talk about infants, we talk about up to pregnancy and seniors, because there are specific nutrients. See, the thing is that people go, well, how can you say all this stuff? Literally all of my recommendations are exactly what the Institute of Medicine recommends. I don't change any of that. I'm not trying to recreate nutrition. You can get all of your nutrition perfectly found in plants, and that's the point of all of this. You don't have to worry about protein. You don't have to worry about these things. You have to worry about B12, which we could talk about. But we are really overnourished, and that's the biggest problem in our society health-wise right now.
So on the protein thing, the deal is we're going to get our protein from plants the same way that the Clydesdale horses do, that the silverback apes do, that the strongest creatures on Earth.
The 10 largest mammals on land, it's like 5 rhinoceroses, 2 hippopotamus, don't quote me on this, and a gar. I had to look up what a gar is. But the 10 largest...
I think a gar is a fish. But...
No, it's not a fish.
Okay.
It's a big, husky-looking thing. But of all those are the 10 strongest animals, okay? They all eat plants. So it's either you eat the plants or you eat the animals that ate the plants. Either way, the amino acids are coming from the plants originally. So you cut out the middle animal with all of the accumulated, pollutants and the concentrations of saturated fat, too many essential amino acids. You cut out all of that stuff and you just go directly to those gorgeous plants that are also beautifully nature provided with phytonutrients and fiber, which are the 2 most health promoting food groups.
Let's just step away from the whole plant-based thing for a second. Let me just ask you a basic thing, because you lay this out in the book, and I sort of feel like the slow kid in class on some of this stuff. Lay out the types of fats if you can in conversation. I mean, there's good fat and bad fat.
Yeah, I mean, this is why nutrition is the most controversial, crazy topic in the world. Like, everyone has an opinion on food because it's so complicated.
Well, give me a good fat.
And there's little consensus.
But the science is very, very clear.
Sure, and I believe that, but not everyone. But the interpretation of said science is different, and from a lot of people within the industry.
Right.
Well, actually, I want to talk about something in a second. I don't know if are you on that ketosis or whatever the hell that's called?
Keto diet?
No, I'm not on a keto diet, but I am on a carb shunning.
Okay,
diet.
Cool. Well, I want to get to...
we could talk about that.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a second.
Okay, I'll talk about that.
I really don't want to talk about it.
I don't want Josh to feel...
It's going to make me feel unhappy.
No, I don't want Josh to feel attacked either.
Oh, no, but I don't
attack.
not
in this conversation. I don't mind generally for him to feel attacked.
No, I know that.
Yeah, and I won't attack. I actually think there's a really strong thing to say about that. But I'll talk about fats first.
Fats. Okay, so give me an example of a good fat.
Okay, so there's only 2 groups of fats that are essential in the diet. So again, when I say essential, it means that you need them from your diet, that you can't make them. We only need the omega-3 and the omega-6 polyunsaturated fats. We don't need saturated fat. We don't need monounsaturated fat. And those...
Again, see, that's when I start hearing all this stuff. I go, where are those things found that you're talking about?
Okay, so the omega-3 fats are found in...
Fish.
Well, fish, if you're
one of us.
The fish eat the microalgae.
Right.
And this is complicated though. Sorry. It starts with ALA, it's one form, and then it elongates to EPA and elongates again to DHA. So there's 3 forms of omega-3 fats. And the fish take the ALA from the microalgae like us vegans do. We eat our flaxseed and chia seed and hemp seed and walnuts and tofu and get our omega-3s. And then our body converts it into EPA and then further elongates it into DHA. Now we need all 3 forms of those fats for all sorts of different things in the body. So that's one type of fat. And the omega-6 fats are found ubiquitously. They're found in every plant oil. They're found in nuts, seeds, like pretty much everywhere in the plant kingdom. Very easy to find omega-6. So we need both of those. And it's interestingly, on a plant-based diet, we vegans, long-term vegans, don't convert, and they don't have as much of the longer chain forms in the blood as do fish eaters. Is that a problem? I don't know. We have lower risk of cardiovascular disease, lower risk of Alzheimer's and all that stuff. So we don't know if that's a problem, but we did start recommending a long chain fatty acid supplement, so like omega-3, like a microalgae supplement. Like I recommend it for my pregnant and breastfeeding clients, to men, older men, pretty much everyone. I started pretty much recommending it to everyone.
That's the omega-6?
Omega-3.
Omega-3.
Omega-6 you don't need to supplement. We get it.
Oh,
we
get
get
it
too
everywhere.
much,
Yeah, that's the one.
especially in the processed foods.
So I think I have that then.
And there's lists in the book of where you get all of those fats.
No,
from.
the book is so thorough. I mean, the book is really like a how-to. You can get through this in this plant-based nutrition book. You also talk about cholesterol, and there's good and bad. And again, there's always a good and bad. There's good and bad in all of life, isn't there, Josh?
There is.
Well, we don't need to consume dietary cholesterol. We make enough. Our liver makes enough. So you only get dietary cholesterol from animal products. And that's one of the benefits of not consuming it, is not bringing in cholesterol. And cholesterol together with saturated fat, which is normally found like packaged together in meat, dairy, eggs, all of the animal products have lots of saturated fat and the cholesterol, and it has this kind of, they call it the bacon and egg, I think it's called the bacon and egg effect, where it just increases your serum body cholesterol levels, which promotes heart disease.
Is bread bad for you?
No, I don't like to call anything bad or good. So there are no superhero foods and there are no villain foods. Bread can be a part of a healthy diet.
That's good news, huh, Josh?
It is. Although I bet we'd have a different list.
Or we could just say ice cream, vegan ice cream.
There you go.
Steak, Gardein.
Okay, so bread is where then? On that?
Well, if you're having a whole grain bread, that's better than a white bread. So I like to think of it as a spectrum. Like the more whole intact foods, the better. Because every time you start stripping away stuff, every time you take away the fiber or the water or some, you lose nutrition. And you lose satiety or satiation from eating that food. So you'll eat more. So bread can fit in to a healthy program for sure. But when I work with a lot of people who are trying to lose weight, and I would have them limit bread, usually.
You also talk about sprouted bread as being better on that spectrum.
Yeah, because that's it's like whole and sprouted, so you're going to absorb some of the nutrients even better because it's sprouted.
When you shop for bread, I ask you listening right now, don't you find this, everybody? It's overwhelming. When did bread get to be this thing where you need to be like Stephen Hawking to read all of the ingredients and just the stuff that they advertise? No cholesterol, no added corn syrup. I mean, these are like things that are advertised. There's Dave's
But it's
bread.
all marketing. So I recommend ignoring everything on the label except the ingredient list. And you shouldn't have to be Stephen Hawking. You should recognize every ingredient. A 6-year-old should be able to read every ingredient and recognize it and pronounce it. That's my advice for looking
What
at
6-year-old
labels.
is it? I'd like to get him to come with me. I have trouble.
Very helpful. He carries things. Traditionally, by the way, when my bread sprouts is when I tend to throw it away.
Not that kind of sprout.
Okay.
Not mold.
You go into vitamins, and you can get all the vitamins you need also on the plant-based diet.
You can, except for B12. Now, the reason for that is that B12 is synthesized by microorganisms in the soil, and the animals eat it, and it's also in their rumens, the rumen animals that animal eaters eat. So that's where the B12 comes from. But because we wash our produce and we don't drink water out of a stream anymore, and we clean all of our stuff, we're not getting B12 directly from the plants.
So wait a minute.
Yes, you have to eat dirt, Mark.
Or take a pill.
It's a dirt pill. Admit it.
I'd heard years ago that we don't really need supplements of any kind, mineral supplements and vitamin supplements, that you really get everything you need if you have a balanced diet. But as these foods, as you say, are stripped down and more processed, and our diet just becomes almost by definition a more processed diet, that can't be true any longer. What is the truth about needing a supplement?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely recommend everyone take a B12 that's on a plant-based diet for sure. And we talk about the dosing and everything in the book, but everyone on a plant-based diet needs that. Vitamin D is something that's is not unique to a plant-based diet. It's kind of this weird worldwide, all of a sudden everyone's deficient, like up to, I don't know, I've heard up to 60-70% of the world's population.
I'm deficient in vitamin D. The doctors tells me that every year. Can you tell, Josh, that I'm deficient in vitamin D?
I was going to actually bring it up.
Yeah.
I figured you had professionals.
I am, but I really
funny.
am.
And we live in Los Angeles with the perfect latitude and sunshine 360 days a year.
You recommend in your book that you go outside and, and get in.
Do you do that, though?
I don't.
That's the problem.
I don't think I really am in the sun much at all.
Right, because we're always indoors and we cover ourselves in sunscreen.
Right. Yeah.
So it's a problem. But that has nothing to do with our plant-based diet because you're supposed to, if you get it from food, on the animal side, it's like egg yolk, which is not healthy. Fish, which it doesn't have a lot of it in there. We're supposed to get D from the sun. The sun activates it in our skin, it activates it in our liver and kidneys, and then we've got active D. But most people are deficient. So I recommend people go not just blindly supplement, but go get their blood tested and see what their levels are because that one is a fat-soluble vitamin. The vitamin B12 is water-soluble, so you can't really overdo it. So you're fine just taking it.
Meaning you'll pee it out.
You'll pee it out, any extra. Yeah, exactly.
What about minerals? I always get the sense that minerals can build up in the body and be a bad thing.
Certain
I know
ones
there's no good and
can.
bad, but
No, but that could be bad if you have toxic. But most of the time that there's kind of an excess and a buildup in the body, it's from supplements, not from the food.
I see.
So you need to.
That's what I'm talking about, like taking a mineral supplement.
Right.
Yeah.
But then again, like iron, for instance. Iron is a mineral, and it's still the number one deficiency around the world. But, you can get it from plants. You can get it better from plants because it's not as well absorbed, which is a good thing, because when it's so well absorbed, it actually causes free radicals to form. So that's why we prefer to get iron from plants. So heme iron is found in animals, and non-heme iron is found in plants. Heme iron goes into the body. It's really well absorbed. And that's why everyone's like, oh, you're anemic, go eat a steak. That's like, I get clients all the time. My doctor told me I need a steak, or you don't need a steak. Don't worry. But the non-heme iron is not as well absorbed. But it turns out that that's actually a real benefit. It's not so well absorbed that it's hard on the body to process.
I see.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you could find non-heme iron in legumes and leafy greens and stuff like that, nuts and seeds. So, but another way to improve your absorption of that in a good way is to have iron-rich foods together with vitamin C-rich foods. So having your big salad with beans, or having tomato chili, where you're having the vitamin C and the iron from the beans together will help improve the absorption.
You lay out so much. It's just a great sort of how-to book and explains everything, and you don't have to go through the whole explanation if you don't want to, but I mean, it is kind of cool how much is laid out. So I'm just going to kind of skip around to some stuff, and just to understand that, we are just sort of skipping around.
I have to quiz you to prove that you actually wrote the book.
Uh-oh.
There are what are called raw vegans, and these people who eat raw or cook raw,
Cook raw.
Well, you know what I mean. I guess
Oxymoron.
prepare food that is raw, right? And I think actually you can prepare it as long as it doesn't exceed a certain temperature threshold. It's considered raw. So what are the advantages of that? That seems like, man, really? Like that's going to be a lot of trouble.
Or a lot less trouble.
Or a lot less trouble.
Seems like a lot less trouble. A lot less pleasant, but less trouble.
I put a jacuzzi in where my stove used to be. All right.
And it raised the room temperature, so my food's hotter.
Which may not qualify it as raw anymore.
Yeah, that's right. So what about a raw diet?
Yeah, okay. So there used to be like one real kind of raw diet like everyone was doing. It was like all the sprouted stuff and the fruits and the sprouted nuts and grains and but then all of a sudden there's this whole new breed nowadays in the last, I don't know, decade or so of raw, like fruitarians, where they're eating just like mounds and mounds of fruit. And it's very interesting. So we don't know if they're going to be any healthier, if there's any further advantages to eating a completely raw diet. And there can be some pitfalls too. So some people are, they end up compensating because they're not getting full eating just fruits and vegetables. So because they're not eating enough, because it requires a lot to get full on fruits and vegetables. Yeah. So they end up doing like oils, like coconut oil, and ends up being a very high fat diet. So, I mean, we don't really know if there's any advantages of being raw versus including some cooked food. Including some cooked food makes it more versatile. It makes it more easy. It makes it, you get satiated really quickly, like by eating starches and, it's much more diverse of a culinary world if you're including cooked foods. But I recommend people try to get like half their diet from raw foods because there are benefits to raw foods for sure.
Is buying organic important? In your book, you kind of suggest that, you don't need to buy organic all the time.
Yeah, I used to be really concerned about organic. And the truth is that the research shows that you're better off eating one more serving of fruit and vegetable, even if it's conventionally grown, than if you don't, because you're worried that it's not organic. I mean, there's one great toxicology study that showed 20,000 cases of cancer could be avoided by increasing one fruit and one vegetable serving a day versus the potentially 10 cancer cases that could be caused from the higher amounts of pesticides.
Wow.
Which is good. So it's like the dose makes the poison. So, yes, if you could buy organic, fantastic. It's great. I like supporting organic farmers, all of that. Better for the environment for sure. But people aren't eating enough fruits and vegetables. So I don't want any further obstacles for them because the most healthful thing you could do on any way of eating is to eat at least half your diet from fruits and vegetables. Period. End of story.
So it seems like some vegetables are more. It would be more important to have organic versions of them than others. Like potatoes, to me, seem like a better organic choice because they're soaking the moisture directly from the earth rather than being filtered through the root system.
But really only the outside is really touching. So like if you're going to be eating the skin, like if you're going to eat the skin of an apple, then get that organic or wash it really, really well.
Right.
But I mean, again, it is an issue, but it's not as it's not even leaps and bounds as important as it is to eat more.
I'm not trying to counterpoint you at all because
yeah. No, but it's an important question. These are all really important. People ask me this all the time, and I think it's important. I just want people to eat more fruits and vegetables. And I mean, organic extends beyond fruits and vegetables too. You know, I still don't. I'm not convinced about GMOs being safe. I'm not sure, so I prefer getting non-GMO. But now it has to be labeled non-GMO, so that's good. But organic has to be non-GMO. But that's another issue that I'm not convinced on either way yet.
But this organic thing is interesting because you discuss it and you really go through some pros and cons. I don't think we have to go through them here, but it's a really cool part of the book where you discuss, hey, organic has these things associated with it too, like runoff from like what's in the water and that can be fecal matter and all the rest. And even though that's filtered out in the process and blah, blah, blah. So you can explain that there's sort of like a gray area here. And I think it's all in service of the fact that you're clearly trying to push people like, hey, don't be turned off by the fact that there were pesticides were used in the process, that there's still such great benefits, as you say. It way offsets whatever issues there might be.
Yes.
You also talk about, a lot of foods are frozen, and you actually talk about the freshness in frozen foods being
fabulous,
better than the stuff that you see out there that looks fresh, like it just came in today.
Yeah, think about it. So it's flash frozen. Like
Right.
these
At the
things
farm.
are picked. Yeah, these things are picked off the ground and frozen. So right away, the nutrient degradation is going to stop. Right, as soon as it's frozen, it's going to slow down tremendously. Or they pick it, they put it in the truck, and the next day they drive to the market, and then it goes in the back shelves in the market, and then a few days later it gets on the shelf, and then maybe you come to the market a couple days later, and you bring it to your house, and days and days and days have gone by since it's come out of the ground, and boom, you have lost all its nutrition. So it's wonderful to get frozen vegetables and fruits. It's wonderful for convenience because I want people to eat more fruits and vegetables and to have food ready to go. Like I travel all the time now. I travel so much. And so it's hard for me to always have fresh food in my fridge, and I hate coming home to an empty fridge. So I always have frozen stuff in the freezer, so I could just whip up a soup or a stew really quickly. And you just always come up with something when you have them. So the other benefit of frozen is that the yield usually ends up being cost effective because you eat everything in the bag.
Right.
You don't have to throw away a lot of
yeah.
it. So it's another good benefit.
I'm glad you mentioned cost because I get that all the time. In fact, I just got this on Twitter the other day. Mark, I'd like to go plant-based, but it's just too expensive.
Yeah.
And everyone who eats meat talks with that voice.
I know that the person did talk like that, Josh. I mean, obviously it's a well-intentioned person, even though they talk like that. And
They're belligerent idiots, but still.
yeah. But is that true? Is plant-based more expensive?
Okay, so the way I want people to eat plant-based is like a peasant diet. It is very affordable. I mean, like dried beans and peas and rice and potatoes and vegetables, which are very cost-effective.
And sleep on a bed of straw.
Yes.
I mean, I'm talking full peasant people.
You got to get into character.
Right.
Yeah.
But if you think about any way of eating, you can eat very simply, or you can eat very gourmet, or eat out more often, or pick the convenience foods, no matter if it includes animals or doesn't. And really, those processed foods are more expensive. The convenience foods are more expensive. Eating out depends, but it's usually more expensive unless you're going to, fast food and getting really bad for you food for $1, which makes me sick. It makes everyone sick. But so absolutely, you could do it. There's books on eating it eating on $4 a day. I designed a program for a food bank a few years ago where we were doing it for under $4 a day. I mean, it's very easy to do it on a budget, and some of the most cost-effective foods are plants.
I sent the person who sent me that tweet, I sent them a link to what you're talking about, which is plant-based eating on less than $5 a day.
Right. When you see hobos, they're eating beans, right?
There you go. So I don't know what's going to happen with that person, but
I mean, think about if you go to the box stores like Costco or Smart and Fine or whatever, and you could buy a huge bag of brown rice, like a huge bag of brown rice for really cheap. You could buy huge cans, but I mean, that's eating simple, and that's actually really
yes,
healthy.
Josh,
And
you can make rice is a good receptacle for flavors of all sorts and spices.
That seems like a big sack of carbs to me, Mark.
All right.
It is
Oh,
a
that's
good
right.
big sack of carbs.
That's right. We'll get into carbs in a second.
We like carbs.
Now, Josh mentions carbs, and there are very popular diets, and I've seen how effective they are because people I know who've gotten off carbs completely for a time, they do lose weight.
My first and most important thing is carbs are not a food group. Carbohydrate is one of 3 macronutrients. Other ones are fat and protein, and all of them make up some ratio in every single intact food. Okay, so now people call carbs all sorts of different things.
Oh, you're saying carbs are in everything then, really?
I
When you
mean,
say
it's a
intact
macronutrient.
food.
Right.
Yeah, it's a macronutrient. But, you can't tell me that eating a lentil chili or a piece of fruit is anything like eating a piece of candy. Because metabolically, they're completely different. They act completely different in your body. So these low carb diet will work. So if you, I don't know what.
But I'd also say the lentil chili acts differently than the piece of fruit.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's, yeah, absolutely. But they're not, but we lump them all together in a lot of these research studies, and they put them all as carbohydrates, but they're not isometabolic.
I see.
So what's really, this whole book it's a second edition. It's completely revised. And I brought on my co-author is Ray Cronice. He designed the most amazing tool to explain all of this. And it's in the book. It's called the Food Triangle. So my last version of this book had a pyramid and then it had a plate when the USDA changed. But now we've gotten rid of the pyramids and plates and we've gone to this food triangle, and it explains how this works. Now, it's hard to explain it without the visual. You could turn to the page if you want to see it. But if you just Google the food triangle, you'll see it because it's been in now. We have a paper written together in the Journal of Geriatric Cardiology, and he's written in 2 other papers about this food triangle. And basically, at the apex of the triangle are the most health promoting, fewest calorie providing foods that we could eat in abundance. So cruciferous vegetables, mushrooms, bulbs, stems, like asparagus and celery, bulbs like onions and garlic. The most health promoting foods with the fewest calories are at the apex. Okay. Now, if you go down to the left side, at the bottom of the triangle, where energy density increases and you're getting it from an animal-based diet or a paleo diet or a keto diet or whatever, where there's meats and eggs and dairy or whatever variation of that, or vegetarian. We put vegetarian on the side of the triangle too, because cheese and eggs are the same as meat and all the other stuff. And so that's where the concentration of calories comes from. So if you're eating on the left side of the triangle and you're eating like a paleo style diet, you're getting all those vegetables, and you're taking out the starches from this side. Of course, you're going to lose weight because you're because of calorie reduction and because of something called oxidative priority, which we could talk about next. If you go down the right side of the triangle, you're including the apex of the triangle with all the cruciferous and the healthy foods. But at the bottom on the right, the plant-based side, where we get our energy density from, are from starches and or nuts and seeds, right? So that's where we get more calories from.
Now, what's a starchy vegetable?
Potatoes, butternut squash, any kind of squash, pumpkin.
Okay.
Yeah. And this will also include legume, would be in the starchy category. But that's where we get our calories from. So we are cutting out the animal side. That's why we could lose weight easily on a plant-based diet. Now, where people get into trouble and why we see benefits from people going on both sides is when you compare it to what most people do called bottom feeding. They call it bottom feeding, which I think is brilliant because people are eating stuff from both sides of the energy density. So they're eating meat and potatoes, a burrito with cheese, or they're eating hamburger and French fries. So you're getting the energy densest foods from both sides. Of course, you're going to gain weight on that.
Because your body's storing all of that in the form of fat.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's really complicated. And that's what I love about Ray's work. That's why our message is so synergistic. And I can't wait for everyone to see this version of the book because of all this stuff. And the oxidative priority part is mind blowing. I mean, I was the same weight my whole life except for my 2 pregnancies. Like I turned 11, I got to my weight. I stayed the same weight until I had 2 babies and came back to the same weight. Despite working out 2 hours a day, all that. When I started implementing the oxidative priority stuff after I worked with Ray, it's been about 14 months, I lost 12 pounds and I have kept it off all year. So for me, as a dietitian and personal trainer, it was like, whoa, this was such an added element that I didn't learn about at graduate school. It was just shocking.
Wow. I need that. I find even as a plant-based eater, I'm putting weight on.
Well, because you said like you're eating the processed foods.
Yeah, I think that's what's happening.
Yeah. And we could talk about oxidative priority. It's really mind-blowing, but that's probably why you're gaining weight or not losing weight.
I mean, my philosophy has been that's the combination of the 2 bottom heavy ends of that triangle is what I'm avoiding essentially.
Right.
And as when I do eat carbs, I stay away from fatty proteins along with it and keep it on the low fat and high vegetable end of the spectrum. And fibrous, hopefully,
Fiber is very important.
And I have to say this about Josh. He is he's successfully doing something because he looks.
I've lost about 50 pounds.
He looks
yeah.
so different than he used to look.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's really cool.
Yeah, it works. So, and actually, we're working on a study. We're trying to get a study done, an actual study, a metabolic ward study, which I like geeking out over this. I'm so excited about this. But we want to test both sides of the triangle.
So you're saying you'll work in a metabolic ward?
Yeah, we're going to put people and make them eat a certain way and monitor the heck out of them. And I really believe that what we're going to find is all the benefits of eating on the right side of the triangle and eating the plants because there's major anti-inflammatory and antioxidative things that don't happen on the left side of the triangle as much. So we're going to compare that And stay tuned for more details. I'm so excited about
That's the other thing interesting that we talk about weight loss. That is cool, though, because to see those results. But we talk about weight loss. But, of course, there's so many other things. There's
cocaine, heroin, drugs, starvation. Those all work for weight loss, too.
Sure.
But what's healthy in the long run is what we're looking at. I'm curious about health span and longevity.
Now, what's this oxidation thing you're talking about?
Oxidative priority. Okay. This is not my work, but this is the most amazing stuff. There's a paper on it, and if you go to bit.ly/oxidative priority, you go right to that PDF. bit.ly/oxidative priority, no capitals, and you will get directly to this paper, and I'll share that with anyone that's interested. It's a free publication online, but it's absolutely amazing. Okay, so pretend you're at a dinner party and you're having wine and vegan cheese, of course, and crackers, right? Yum. So what happens is your body stores food and calories based on volume, how much it can store. Alcohol, it can't store at all. It's an emergency. You got to get that metabolized immediately because it's a toxin. Okay, as much as, we love a glass of wine here and there, it is a toxin. So our body will prioritize that. In the meanwhile, the carbohydrates found in the cracker are going to get somewhat used as well, but whatever we don't use will get stored because we could store up to about 1,500, 2,000 calories worth of carbohydrate in the form of glycogen in our muscles and our liver. And then the amino acids will also, the amino acids go after the alcohol. Then the amino acids, if we have too many amino acids, they will get metabolized too. Then comes the carbohydrate, but then the fat that came along with that vegan cheese is going to get stored because we're prioritizing all this other stuff. And we could store infinite amounts of fat, as we've seen. Like people could store hundreds and hundreds of pounds of fat. It's infinite. So that fat goes right in while you're metabolizing everything else. So if you eat that stuff together, that's where the problem comes in.
Wow, so just to stop the music for a second, if I were to just eat the vegan cheese and cracker without the wine, would I have a better chance of the body sort of casting off and storing less of that fat?
It depends on how much of it, right? It'll use up the carbohydrates first. It'll metabolize the carbohydrates first, and whatever else is left will get from the fat will get stored. Okay. Fat is just the easiest thing for the body.
So my
to
vodka
store.
and French fries diet is wrong.
Wrong. That's not why you lost 50 pounds for sure. Yeah, delicious, but
did you cut out alcohol for your thing?
I have for the most part.
Yeah.
Alcohol just kills fat.
I mean, the theory that I work in my head, the simplest way I think of it in my head is basically if you're drinking, even if it's not carbs, you're not losing weight while you're drinking because your body has to deal with the alcohol first.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's still something I got to get over, the drinking. I mean, just a cocktail now and then. I don't want people to think that I'm, like I took a couple hours off the drinking to be here today.
Yeah, that was good. It was good. And you gave it a nice safe envelope for the freeway, which is nice.
Exactly. So I'm with you now. All right. You're saying that's the way that process works. That's called oxidated what?
Oxidative priority.
Okay.
So your body prioritizes what it can store versus what it has to metabolize.
I believe in that too.
You go through exercise and how important it is. So this is really like it's a whole approach to better health. It's not just the eating. You say you have to do some moving.
Yes.
But the thresholds for moving, this is what I like because I hate exercise. I mean, I used to be a tennis player and I used to love it, but then I got injured and then I became, more sort of lazy. And I think that a lot of people are lazy based on what I see in America. And so I guess I like something that speaks to me. I can speak as a lazy person, that you've set the threshold pretty low for exercise.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I'm a personal trainer. I'm a rehabilitated gym rat. And like I said, I used to exercise 2 hours a day since I remember when I was 16, the day I turned 16, the first place I went to was the gym to join my first gym. And still, when I lost my 12 pounds, it was when I stopped exercising. Because weight loss is so different from exercise.
I was about to say, I mean, the key, exercise is the key to health, but not to weight loss.
Exactly. But what I'm now, and I was getting injured because I was exercising so hard. And I see all my people, after you're done with reproductive prime and nature is done with you, all bets are off. That's when stuff starts to fall apart. So our goal, and what I'm really
are you telling us you're past your reproductive prime?
No. But I am.
I've never heard that term. Past when it's reproductive prime.
Past your fecundity, when you're not fecund anymore. That's a fun word too that I've learned. When you look at longevity and health span, if you look at the blue zones, and if you look at the longest lived populations around the world, they're not running marathons and ultra marathons, and they're not trying to kill it in what's that called the
CrossFit?
Yes, thank you. Exactly. CrossFit. They're not doing that. They're just moving and they're active and they lift things and they walk around and they're just active. And that's what longevity is about. If you look at if you interview all these people that have lived long and healthy, they're just moving. They're not doing hardcore exercise.
It seemed like you were saying, hey, don't sweat it. You could do like really moderate amounts of exercise or movement, and that can be sufficient.
Right. No, there's definitely moderation around exercise that I'm learning, especially for health span. If you're an athlete, another thing about athletes, and we have a whole chapter for just athletes, a whole chapter on exercise and a whole chapter for sports nutrition. And the problem with athletes is you get into some situations that are very unhealthy because it's all about go, grow and anabolism and they'll do anything. And I've talked to a lot of people behind the scenes what really goes on with those bodybuilders. I know there's a lot of bodybuilders that have done it healthfully or whatever, but they're gunning the protein. And what do you think that's going to happen down the line if what we're seeing, we're going to see more cancer, we're going to see more heart disease. It's not healthy to be chugging down, overnourishing yourself, hitting it in the gym. You're just filling up and repleting. And
what did Rich Roll say about that? Did you have that conversation? He's an elite athlete, Rich Roll, who you has been on this show before and whose podcast you did. He does a great job of like laying out a lot of the precepts for training, and he's amazing. He's an ultra marathoner,
Yes. Yeah, he's amazing.
I guess those people are in a different category, and
they aren't longevity based necessarily either.
I mean, that's exactly it. I mean, there is a balance between longevity and intense extreme exercise, and I don't know how that's going to play out. Like the research, we don't really know how that's going to play out in the long run because it's really new that so many people are doing this.
Yeah,
the way they're doing it now. And then spending 23 other hours of the day being completely sedentary, No,
I know. That is bizarre, huh? Are calories important?
Well, yes.
Like, when you talk about the label, what should I look for first on that label? Then we can get back to calories if we... Yeah.
Ignore everything on the label but the ingredients.
Okay, so but when I look at the ingredients, what's important?
Whole foods, stuff you can recognize, stuff that you can pronounce. Stuff that is...
Mark has a chemistry degree, so be careful.
With that, you could be able to do without the chemistry degree. I just want stuff that you know what it is, like the fewest amount of ingredients. Focus on vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes, nuts, seeds, herbs, and spices. And there's like an infinite combination. You know how delicious it is to eat this way. There's so many possible ways to do it. But so when you're looking at the store, try to eat on they always say the periphery, just like eating the fresh foods as much as possible. And the least amount of ingredients. So like one ingredient is just lentils. That's a great package. Buy it, Mm-hmm. Anytime you see sugars and oils and modified food starch and, red number 3 and all that stuff, put it down. Keep walking.
And the calorie count, should I worry about that just in general?
I mean, it's good. Yeah, it's important. Calories do matter.
What's the number that we all should hit?
So we can't. So I'm like the dietitian that won't count. I won't count calories. I won't count your carbs. I won't count your fat grams. Don't even try to get me to do that. I will refuse.
I'll say low 2000s a day if you want to maintain your weight as an adult male.
Is that's you?
She won't say. She won't.
You wouldn't quibble with that.
She's looking at me like I'm an asshole for saying it.
No. No one looks at you. We all look at you like you're an asshole because you're an asshole.
That's true. I get that.
Calories matter, but more so it's how you consume the calories. That's what we talk about with oxidative priority. It's all about, like all this information now about intermittent fasting and decreasing your feeding window, your time restricted feeding has shown incredible benefit.
Oh, it has?
Yeah. I'm a real big believer in that,
I was
too.
just talking about that this morning.
Really excited about the reason. Yeah.
Is that right? About the time restricted eating?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of what I end up doing by default anyway, but it kind of makes sense to me and just.
So really what that means is the time that you're actually eating during the day versus the time that you're not in the fed state.
Right. And it's 2 to 1, right? Is that the ratio?
No, there's all sorts of different theories on it, but it's, some people I do 18-6, so 18 hours of not eating and then 6 hours, like I'll have 2 meals within that 6-hour window usually. You have like one big meal and then you have another little meal or something, or 2 medium meals or something. And then, it's really doable. It's not painful at all.
Is it complete calorie restriction outside that window?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I'll do coffee or tea. I'll do like clear tea or sometimes black coffee.
Right. So, but there's no calories.
Because there's no calories.
Right.
So it's not going to signal insulin or.
Gotcha.
You know a lot of stuff. I've followed your work for years now. I'm really excited that you're here. So I'm going to ask you a couple things that may or may not be related purely to your discipline, but maybe, you can weigh in on them.
Sure.
One I know you do speak of in the book, and that's dementia and Alzheimer's. And I think kind of as we see parents and as we ourselves fear like sliding into that world, I'm sure there's no conclusive stuff on this, but where is this plant-based diet vis-a-vis those things?
That's such a good question, and I agree. It terrifies me. It terrifies me more than anything. Cognitive health is really scary. Like, you just want to maintain your brain. But I think it's preliminary, but very promising from what I've seen. I think the data is growing. And even just talking about like time-restricted feeding and having time to clean out your brain and get rid of some of those amyloid plaques. Some of that stuff happens when you're not eating, when you're not putting all that taxing energy into metabolism. Not metabolism, it's all metabolism, but into digestion and absorption. So, some of that stuff it's very compelling. And eating all the high antioxidants, has been associated with improved brain cognitive function.
Throw us a couple of antioxidants that we could pick up on the way home.
All right. Anthocyanins, so get some blueberries, and some carotenoids, so like some potato or raspberries.
What about the cleanses that are very popular in Hollywood and, where the liberal elite live?
That's why we have a lymphatic system.
Yeah, that's why we have liver and lungs.
The cleanses are a bad idea. Do they stress your body?
What is it? What kind of
It depends what kind.
If you're doing all the like supplements and all that stuff, it's not going to replace a good diet.
My agent does a, I don't know, it's been so long since he's called, I forget what. No, he's done.
He's still eating Snackwells by the phone.
He does like a 9 or 10 day cleanse. And it's with that juice or whatever. It's
the Master Cleanse thing with the lemon
Master Cleanse,
water.
right.
And he calls himself Master Cleanse while he's doing it too.
But it's like
I am Master Cleanse.
He said after 3 days, he goes, I feel great. He's in the office. He's working. I'm thinking, talk to me in 3 more days.
Yeah, that's I did over the holidays because I'm scared. I'm not good about I love to eat, and so I've done like I've been doing 1 meal a day for a while, just experimenting with that. But I did over the holidays. I made it 45 hours without food, and it was the longest 45 hours of my life. I was so hungry.
The last 5 hours are bad.
The whole time I was so grumpy. It was awful. But water.
Why did you do that?
Because it's so healthy, and like the water fasts are
then.
so healthy. Yeah,
what?
A water fast, like a real fast is no food. It's just water.
Okay.
And
it's like Yom
my
Kippur.
goal is to get to a 5
No,
or
there's
7.
not even water on Yom Kippur. Sorry.
You're not allowed water on Yom Kippur?
You're not supposed to.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I always do.
Yeah, well, God knows.
Yeah, I know. God is watching. But I want to do a water fast for 7 days someday. It's my fantasy. I don't know if I'll ever really actually have the discipline. I'll have to be like locked up somewhere with no ability to complain to anyone.
If you ever meet a genie and that's one of your wishes, you'll get 3 in addition to that.
That won't qualify as a wish? No.
Okay. I'll throw you a bone. There's your 7-day water fast.
Wait a minute. I meant a wish. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that doesn't count. Okay, you got that. Right. So you're not totally averse to them at all. And you say they're good. And when you say they, I know is wildly generalizing, but I'm just saying some of these fasts are good because what? It's getting rid of toxin. Is that the thing?
Really? If you think about it's so energy demanding to digest and absorb. It just takes up all the energy. Like every time you've had a big meal, like Thanksgiving, the next day you're
especially with carbs.
So tired.
The carbs really make you feel.
It's the fat and it's the animal products.
Yeah,
but
I gotta tell you, I've been on both sides of the fence, and there's a difference because of the carbs. It's not the protein.
Okay. No, I didn't say it was a protein. But anyway.
Or the fat.
Anyway.
She said the animal products.
No, I know.
So, but the point is that when you eat, the body has to shun all of its blood into the gut to go through the whole process, and it takes 4 to 6 hours for 1 meal to get through. Then what we do is we literally are a society that eats all day, that takes breaks to sleep and work, right? But other than that, we're eating. We're stuffing our faces all the time. Like at the gas station, there's food because we can't make it there. On the airplane for the 1 hour flight, you have to have peanuts and you have to have a drink because you can't go for an hour without food. So it's like we just always are eating. So our body's always in this state of digestion and absorption. And it's really taxing on the body, and stuff builds up. When you're not eating, from the time you stop eating, and then after 6 hours, 4 to 6 hours, when you've gone through that last meal, then your body's like, okay, now I could take time to do all my rejuvenation, my house cleaning, all the work that needs to be done. It goes through proteins and it gets rid of stuff that you don't need.
It's like sleeping longer.
Yeah, this stuff happens in your sleep too.
Right.
Actually, sleep is really important for the brain. Like if you went without sleep, you would go insane.
Sure.
Because your brain needs to rejuvenate too. It's also really helpful for like sleep hygiene and circadian rhythm is to stop eating several hours before bed so that you could go into sleep and really have a full, deep, healthy sleep.
That was going to be my last question. It's not good to eat Within the hour
I
before
say
bed?
4 hours
3 hours,
usually. Yeah.
Yeah.
Give yourself time to get through that whole whatever you just say, especially if it's a bigger meal, then you want to eat it earlier. But now that I've been doing this time restricted thing and been eating like 1 or 2 meals a day, if I eat even at 6 o'clock, I'm still full by like 11 o'clock, and it's like ruins my sleep. So it's interesting how it changes.
Well, I'm very excited about helping this book along because I think it's a really cool book. It's very thorough, and there's a lot here. It's called Plant-Based Nutrition, and there'll be a link to it on our website, edge-show.com. It'll take you right to where you can get it. And now, you have a website as well, though, don't you?
I do. Thank
What
you
is
for
it?
saying that, by the way. It is plantbaseddietitian.com. And now I have Julieanna.com. So you can go.
Do you really?
It might be easier. Yeah.
How did you get Julieanna.com?
Because I spell my name funny.
With an
It's
E in
spelled
there.
Julie and Anna. Yeah, Julie and Anna put together, so it's not a commonly used spelling. So I was able to get Julieanna.com.
Wow.
Yay.
That's impressive.
It just feels funny saying it.
And on Twitter, you are
Plant Dietitian.
Plant Dietitian.
And on Facebook, I'm Plant-Based Dietitian. And I'm going to be on I'm excited to launch Facebook Watch. It's launching, like, my first episode comes out next week, and it's all about, we're going into people's homes and getting them healthy, and it's called Home Sweat Home.
That's good.
So you can find me on Facebook there, too.
Oh, that's really cool. We're really excited that you were here, and good luck with the book.
Thank you so much for having me, Mark.
Julieanna Hever. I hope, like I did, you learned something in the conversation with Julieanna Hever and you found it interesting. She was a great guest, and I'm so glad you had a chance to hear from her. Thank you for your support of the show. Thank you for the 5-star reviews and for writing up just a word or two. Literally, it can be just a word or two on iTunes to help keep our show at the top of the iTunes queue. Until next time, bye-bye.
If you enjoy listening to The Edge, support them by subscribing to The Edge on iTunes, Stitcher, and you can listen through the iHeartRadio app. Get busy listening.
edge-show.com.
edge-show.com.